Hello friends, I am Dr. Sonali Pawar, Assistant Professor at Dada Patil College, Karjat. The topic of my video lecture is an introduction as a confessional poem. Let us introduce with the poem and the poet first. An introduction is the best confessional and autobiographical poem written by Kamala Das. Kamala Das is a well-known confessional poet in Indian English poetry. Her poetry deals with personal, emotional, taboo experiences. Kamala Das is a bilingual poet who writes in both Malayalam and English. Malayalam is her mother tongue, but she feels very free in writing in English language. An introduction is the poem taken from Kamala Das's collection of poetry, The Summer in Calcutta. The theme of the poem and introduction is the quest for identity and fulfillment. At the beginning of the poem, the poetess introduces herself as an innocent girl through the stanza. I'm Indian, very brown, born in Malabar. I speak 3 languages, write in 2, dream in 1. As we have discussed before, she is a bilingual writer who can write in her mother tongue Malayalam as well as in English very frequently, very freely. But what is this third language we can't see? Thus, this poem is an attempt of self-exploration and self-integration. Basically, the poem is concerned with the question of human identity and the identity of an Indian poet who writes in English. But the poem effectively uses confessional mode to focus on woman's identity as an Indian English writer, a daughter, a wife, daughter-in-law, and so on. In the next part of the stanza, the poetess declares her freedom to choose her own language. She also shows confidence in her creative talent through this piece of stanza. See what she says? The language I speak becomes mine. It is half English, half Indian. Funny perhaps, but it is honest. It is as human as I am human. Then comes the puzzling adolescence and the pain of growing up. This is followed by a desire to be with the male world despite the family and social pressures to conform to the traditional feminine role. Since next stanza she says, the categorizers, the social and the family members always pressurize the young girl in this way. Dress in saris, be girl, be wife, they said. Be Amy or be Kamla. It is time to choose a name, a role. Thus, from her own experiences, through this autobiographical confessional poem, Kamala Das expressed her feminine sensibility. She expressed freely the social pressures on an adolescent girl to conform to the traditional feminine role. This is the expression of feminine sensibility in very powerful words. Actually, confessional poetry is a struggle to relate the private experience with the outer world as it is. In an introduction in this poem by Kamala Das struggles to keep her identity against the categorizers who ask her to fit in the role of woman. but she refuses to choose a name and a role too. She rebels against a male-dominated world. Finally, comes the realization that her experiences are the experiences of every woman. In this way, this poem expresses very powerfully the feminine sensibility. The theme of the poem, as we have discussed before, is the quest for identity. In the next stanza, the poet says that I am saint, I am the beloved, and the betrayed. I too call myself I. When she searches, when she quests for identity, she finds out the answers at the end of the poem, in the last stanza of the poem. See, what are those? I am sent, I am the beloved, and the betrayed. I too call myself I. Here, the poet feels it necessary to define her identity. In the same stanza, she says, I have no joy, which are not yours, no eggs, which are not yours. Means my experiences are a woman's experiences, and they cannot be yours. You cannot understand my pains, my feelings, because you are a man and I am a woman. So I too call myself I. Here, there is the painful assertion, I too call myself I. It comes from the predicament of a confessional poet. There is again ruthless self-analysis and a tone of utter sincerity. She also confesses what mistakes she has done and what kind of injustice the society has done with her. Very plainly, very sincerely, she expressed all those things as a confessional poet. And now we will turn to the conclusion. Confessional poetry is all autobiographical. It is rooted in the personal experiences of the poet in the same manner as I have introduced before. An introduction is an autobiographical poem which is rooted in Kamala Das's personal experiences from childhood to the middle age. T.S. Eliot stressed the impersonality of poetry. According to T.S. Eliot, when the poetry is impersonal, it can be great. But confessional poetry is intensely personal. However, a great confessional poet like Kamala Das achieves impersonality in another way. From the personal and the particular, she rises to the general and the universal. See once again, from the personal and the particular, she rises to the general and the universal. She transforms her intense personal experience into a general truth. She transforms her intense personal experience into a general truth. Her own become symbolic of human predicament. Her own sufferings become symbolic of human predicament. Herein lies Kamala's greatness as an intensely personal and universal artist. Thank you.